Welcome to chess, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so I'm following the Skilling Open Champions Chess Tour. It's the knockout portion, and so we have a game, Wesley versus Hikaru Nakamura. So if you haven't seen this game yet, it's crazy. It's crazy. It's funny. I'm actually about to coin a new term for the thing. I'll tell you like later on in the video. But I think it's kind of funny. I don't know. Maybe you might think it's funny or not. I don't know. But this is, yeah, like I looked at this game about an hour ago, and it's one of the craziest games you'll see in these tournaments, man. It's insane. So I'm definitely very ready to go. If you're ready to go, let's take a look and see what we have. Let me adjust the screen here. Bam. All right, so let's take a look and see what we have here. All right, so we have E4, E5, knight to F3, knight to C6, bishop C4, bishop C5. So we have it's the Giuoco piano, right? So, you know, Giuoco piano is Italian for quiet game, right? And so, you know, it starts off very quiet, you know. All right, so we have C3, we have knight to F6, D3. So now we are in the Giuoco Pianissimo. Which is very quiet game. Now, like I said at the beginning of the video, I'm coining a new term, and so I'm actually going to start calling this after this game the Giuoco Loco. So just adding a little bit of Spanish and Italian in there together, I think it fits pretty nicely. Giuoco Loco. So you know, Giuoco piano, it just doesn't do this game justice. This is an insane game. Like I said, for those of you that actually were watching the Chess 24 broadcast of this game, you know, it's exciting. So it's like you don't even have to be like a chess enthusiast to really be excited about this game. So like I said, it is now currently called the Giuoco Loco. And in the future, when I'm making videos, if I come across a Giuoco piano, I might start referring to it as a Giuoco Loco. So for those of you that know me, they're gonna know why I'm saying that. Anyway, continuing rolling here. All right, so we have D6. So everything's looking pretty standard. You know, it's looking pretty normal. You know, just like what we've seen in the past. You know, a lot of people are playing the Giuoco piano, Giuoco Pianissimo openings and stuff. It's been played forever, you know. And so we have castles for white, H6 for black, rook to E1, castles. So all, you know, very standard stuff, you know, just like stuff we saw, you know, before and stuff like that. So we're not really going into any, you know, sidelines as of yet. All right, so we have knight B to D2. All right, so we got A5, knight to F1, bishop to E6, bishop up to B5. Like I said, all pretty typical stuff, you know. We've seen this before yesterday between two separate players, but we still saw this same, you know, kind of series of moves. And you know, this is all theory, so you know, it's all been seen before. So we have bishop back to B6. You know, just trying to maintain, you know, a little bit of pressure on this F2 square, which, as you guys hear me say before, you know, the F7 and the F2 square are usually only defended by the king. So it makes it a very, very vulnerable point in people's positions. All right, so we have knight to G3 and we have knight to H7. Now, knight to H7 is a brand new move. When I was looking through the database after H3, if knight F6 actually returns back to the board, it is a brand new series of moves, but the position has been seen before. But like I said, knight to H7 specifically, that move on that, you know, as of 11, is a brand new position that we've seen. All right, so we have knight coming to G5. I mean, I'll say honestly a little curious. I mean, it's just kind of like you're voluntarily, you know, disrupting your pawn structure here. And usually when you damage your pawn structure, you're trying to get like kind of something in return. Maybe open lines for some pieces or something like that, or maybe a good spot for a piece to sit. But you know, I don't really feel like there's a lot of justification for going knight to G5. Now, at the end of the day, I'd probably lose every game I play against Hikaru Nakamura. I might could get a draw. I don't know. You know, like I said, I mean, there's just certain things that you might take a look at and see that look kind of strange. And I think some of you might be looking at it like it does look kind of a curious move, you know, because you're not going to be able to take back with the queen because of the bishop right here, right? You know, attacking that square as well. So, so we have knight takes G5, pawn takes G5. All right, so we have D4. Might look like it might look like at first glance it's giving away a pawn, but the question you might have about this is going to get answered here in a second. So we have E takes D4 and we have bishop takes C6. So at first it probably looked like, you know, because the knight wasn't pinned to anything, you know, you were kind of maybe thinking, well, I mean, can't you just win a pawn? And so that in between Zwischenzug move, you know, bishop takes C6, you know, answers that question pretty well. So, you know, once, you know, black takes back, B takes C6 and you take C takes D4, as you can see, you know, it doesn't win black a pawn. So you're all the way good. If you can see, like I said always before, if you guys can see those kind of little in-betweener type moves and stuff, those are very, even at the highest level, they're very hard. If it's a non-expected move, they're very hard to calculate. And a lot of times, like I said, you know, people, you know, when you're playing games with them, they're not seeing these moves, you know, and so, you know, you can kind of get a foot up on them, you know, as far as calculation is concerned. All right, so we have C5. Trying to break away that center, you know, and so, you know, a lot of times when you guys will see in my videos, like somebody will go C6 then C5, or they'll just go C5 directly and they hit this pawn a lot, you know, this D4 pawn. And it's similar, so it's not the exact same movements, but you know, it's kind of like the theme doesn't really change. So, you know, and that's the thing about it when you're studying a game of chess, you know, it's not so much about like memorizing a specific set of moves. It's about kind of understanding the idea behind why moves are played. And so, you know, it gives you ideas in some positions that you wouldn't normally have if you just memorized a bunch of moves. And you know, you didn't really understand why moves were being played. So that's why it's important to not only memorize. I mean, there's nothing wrong with memorizing openings or something like that, but you know, it definitely is a poor substitute for true like understanding of positions and stuff. So so we have D5, and so you guys can kind of see that this bishop is, I think as Yasser Sirawan calls it, a tall pawn. And so right now this bishop isn't really doing that great because it's like basically kind of like a pawn, like its other. Oops, let me not do that. My bad. And so yeah, it doesn't have a lot of influence on the position really, you know. All right, so we got the bishop back to D7. And as you guys can see, you know, black's getting pushed around a little bit with their pieces. I mean, this bishop doesn't really, you know, have a lot of squares to go to. Of course, if it tries to come here, it's going to get knocked back with this. And, you know, it doesn't have any of these squares to go to and stuff like that. So, you know, even though he does have the bishop pair, you know, the bishops are, you know, they're kind of bad compared to this knight, which, you know, has some scope coming here. This bishop has the ability to come out, you know, in this way, or maybe even if you were to take, you know, if you were to hit B2, bishop B2. So, you know, these minor pieces for black, you know, are definitely better than the minor pieces for white, or the minor pieces for white are definitely better than the minor pieces for black at the moment. All right, so we have A4, just, you know, like I said before, just, you know, restricting this bishop as much as possible. Now the bishop really only has 2 legal moves. Well, it has a bunch of legal moves, but I mean, none of them make sense, like I said a second ago. All right, so we have rook to E8. All right, so we got bishop to D2. All right, C4, just trying to give that bishop a little bit of scope here. All right, so we have queen to F3, just making sure, you know, hitting this tender F7 square, but also making sure that we have like a good defense on this F2, you know, F2 square here. All right, so we have rook to B8 and bishop to C3, just making sure we defend this pawn here on B2 and getting the bishop on a nice diagonal. All right, so we got bishop to C5, got rook to E2, and so we have F6, and we have knight to F5. Another variation that you know, was definitely very possible in this position. So after we have F6, is go back here, is actually just you know, grabbing the pawn. And it's a pretty true pawn. I mean, you're able to get the pawn, and I mean, it does come with some counterattacks, but you know, it's definitely not a bad move. So I mean, maybe some of you guys might have been looking and saying, well, couldn't I just take the pawn? It's possible. So if we just kind of run through a little slight variation real quick. So we see rook to A8, bishop back to C3, rook takes A4, rook takes A4, bishop takes A4. We see knight back to F5, and this is pretty beneficial for white because, you know, they're able to, you know, really plop that knight down in that F5 square with, you know, and then the bishop is not here to really contest it. So it's going to, you know, you're going to need a tempo to kind of go back to that. So the bishop will come back to D7. You see rook down to E1, just making for sure in case of any type of like double trades, let's say the queen goes over here and takes this, and you take it, and that way you don't have the undefended rook on e2. You back the rook up so that way it's at least defended by the bishop. And that's something that's really important too. To make sure that you never really get in positions where your pieces are undefended. So you always want to be thinking that way when you're playing games. So we probably see bishop takes f5 and queen takes f5. And if you guys notice, this rook is going to be able to get some type of scope. Probably coming over here to either c1 or a1, taking over these files. And there's not really a good way to defend this pawn for black. So this is definitely a considerably better position for black here. So just backing up to what we had in the game, like I said, we had knight to f5 directly. So we have bishop to b4, bishop to d4, bishop to c5, bishop back to c3. So it looks like we're just actually going to go into a draw. But Wesley saw he varies in his move. And so you don't really too much want to trade here with these bishops and the pawn, because this pawn is just going to drop because there's not really a way to defend it. So we have bishop to c8. All right, so bishop to d4, bishop to a6. Just making sure we defend that pawn. So knight back to f5, bishop to c8, knight back to e3, bishop to a6. And so it looks like we're gonna repeat moves again. And so so we have a rook to c1, just attacking this vulnerable pawn here on c4. And so we have queen to d7, trying to lay a little bit of a trap in this particular position, because there's a real big temptation, I think, for some people to take that pawn on c4 because it looks very juicy. But if we were too hasty and we took it immediately, we'd see rook takes c4 and we'd see bishop to a6. Now this definitely isn't losing for white, but it makes the task of winning the game considerably more difficult than it was before. You always want to make sure that when you're capturing or you're putting your rooks in a game, if the person has that same color bishop, you want to be very, very careful how you're putting your rooks. So so we saw rook e to c2, which is the top move in the position. And so we see bishop to a6, just making sure that we defend that pawn on c4. So we have h4, a nice little clearance sacrifice. Very, very good, because now it's you see that white is trying to break the position open, and they just have so much. They have so much on this square. They have the bishop, they have the knight coming, so it's like you really can't afford a trade here. It's just going to open up the position a little bit too much for you here. So we have g takes h4, which is still pretty. It's still not that great. I mean, white has a very severe. It's probably about a 2 or 3 point advantage in this particular position. Because you're looking at it all of these pieces for white have the ability to, kind of transfer themselves over here to the king side. And these bishops are really kind of out of play. They're not really influencing the king side at all. So, they're not doing very good in this particular position. So we have queen to g4. And if you guys want to go ahead and stop the video real quick and just kind of think from the black perspective, what is the idea? Of course, you see that there's like checkmate on g7. If you have the ability to lay that down. Let's say the queen just kind of says, hey man, I'm gonna take a vacation over here, of course it's gonna be dropping mate in 1. But I'm curious to see how many people can see what the idea is here for white. So go ahead and stop the video and take a couple seconds to see if you can find that move here. All right, cool. So I'm curious of all the different moves that you guys might have came up with, but let's say, for example, you kind of just make a passive move, you don't recognize the threat, and let's say you just go bishop, bishop to b7. The idea here, the first thing that you need to be paying attention to is the fact that this queen is completely undefended. And this queen with this knight out of the way is indirectly attacking it. So it's kind of x-raying through this knight here. And so what you're going to have is you're going to have knight to h6 check, giving up the knight, checking the king, and you're going to be able to discover an attack on this queen. So after, a king to h7 or something, you're going to see queen takes d7 and you just drop the queen. That was actually a theme that I actually saw in another video of mine as well. But it's a common tactical theme, the discovered attack. It's similar when, you capture a pawn behind a bishop and the bishop, takes with check, and then the queen is just dropped completely. So a lot of you guys might be familiar with that. And then of course, if you have a situation where, a queen comes over, you have the same type of an idea. And so Hikaru sidesteps that with king to f8, which is really the only move in the position. And so you know, Wesley So says, I'm gonna go ahead and lay the smack down. So he just throws the bishop away. He's like, man, you know, I don't even need the bishop, bro. I'm gonna get you without a bishop. Like, just be a whole piece down. And so so we see bishop takes f6, g takes f6. We see queen takes h4. So we see king to g8 and rook over to e2. Now, another interesting variation would have actually been, and this is like just insanely killer, was queen to h5. And there's really not a whole lot you can do after queen h5. You can try to maybe go queen f7. You know, so we see queen to h8 check, queen back to g8 only move, queen takes f6, queen to f7 only move, and you do a little bit of adjusting here with your queen. So you get queen to h6 check, king to g8, queen to g5 check, king back to f8, and then we see knight to h6. And you're threatening pretty much mates. The queen can't move because you're gonna just come back probably to this square and check, and then the queen's gonna have to block. So you got to try to do a counter attack with rook to e5. And so we see knight takes f7, rook takes g5, you know, and then knight takes g5, and you see that you're up an entire piece. And you're actually up an entire pawn as well. So that's definitely not something that you want to go into. But I mean, there's nothing really else that's better in this position. This is just completely like 100% lost for black. And so we're going to see that here in a second. So like I said, we had queen takes h4, king to g8, rook to e2, just swinging this rook over. Like, this rook is about to come here and cause all kinds of havoc. So we got rook to e5, just desperately trying to, you know, maybe just throw the exchange away to try to, you know, hold off checkmate. So we got rook to e3, rook takes f5, we got rook to h3. So Wesley So doesn't even take the rook. He said, I don't even need your rook, bro. Interestingly enough, taking the rook was actually the best possible, quickest checkmate variation. So we would have e takes f5, bishop to d2, trying to give some type of counter attack. We'd see rook to g3, you know, bishop coming back to g5. So we see f4, you know, exploiting that pin on the g file. Queen would come to h7, queen would come over to g4. We see bishop back to c8, trying to give a little bit of attack. So we see f takes g5, bishop takes f5, and then queen over to f4, you know, maintaining the attack here. All right, so rook to b3, and these literally are only moves. These are the only moves that black can really make to try to survive this position. And these are just like completely computer moves at this point, you know. And pretty much when you look at the other moves, they're just like, yeah, making something, like, so you don't want to make those moves. So we see rook takes b3, c takes b3, pawn takes f6, bishop back to g6, queen to g4, queen to f7, and rook to e1. And you just, I mean, you can just see that the penetration here. This rook completely owns this e file. This queen is pinning this bishop. There's just really nothing that black can really do here to try to hold on at all. So, like I said, we have rook to e3, rook takes f5. Wesley So doesn't even care. He's like, I'm about to go for checkmate. And we see rook to g5. And then so we see it's literally, it's a mate in two now. There's just no there's no avoiding it here. So we got queen to h8, king to f7, you know, rook to h7, and then this rook is gonna come back and defend like this, and then we have checkmate right here. And like, if you guys have seen the chess 24 like coverage on this, you'll see in this position it was funny, man. Once you saw queen to h8 come on the board, and you know, king moving over and then rook coming up, like, you just seen Hikaru Nakamura just like look so disgusted, like he didn't see the mate in like 2 or 3 coming up. He was like, he just was like, man, he was like, I can't believe, took his headphone out, like, I can't believe what he just did. Like it's just like, it was just funny. And then they were commentating and they were just like, they were talking about it like, you know, it's almost like he didn't see it. And it was just like, it's really not funny, man, because it's like, I done been in situations where, like, I mean, I've been in situations where I missed the mate in one, like, just, you know, plopping the queen right in front of my king. And I was like, are you kidding me? So yeah, I feel the pain, man, but it's very comical. If you get a chance, I'll suggest you watch the clip, because it's classic, man. But this was just a complete demolishment. This is the Giuoco Loco that I'm gonna start calling it. And so, man, it's crazy, man. So it's like, I mean, you know, and you can see, I mean, Wesley So was down 2 entire pieces, man. And it's like, how do you lose? How do you just give away 2 pieces and still win, man? But that's the game. I appreciate you guys coming through, and I'm gonna be doing a couple more videos on these other games and stuff. So I will see you guys next time. I appreciate it.